Well, hello and welcome to today's session of Basic Hebrew for the Bible Study Hickory on this 6th day of November 2022. We have, for the past couple of sessions, been taking a look at Hebrew prepositions, and now we're going to make a transition into talking about Hebrew adjectives. So, before going into Hebrew adjectives, I do want to review a little bit about the Hebrew nouns. So, remember when we're talking about Hebrew nouns, nouns can be identified based on their gender, number, and state. So, gender, referring to the pattern of endings that they follow. So, some nouns will follow a masculine pattern of endings. Well, we label it masculine for the sake of convenience. And then other nouns will follow a feminine set of endings. And again, we call that feminine for the sake of convenience. But basically, we have two different sets of endings, one of which we label masculine, the other of which we label feminine. And then we also have number, singular, dual, and plural, where singular refers to one, dual, two, and then plural, three or more. Then we also have what we call the two different states, absolute and construct. Absolute just means that the noun is not being modified by another noun. Construct means that the noun is, in fact, being modified by another noun. And we can tell all of these things by taking a look at the endings that we have on a particular noun. And so at this point, I'm not going to go over the construct. We'll actually take a look at that either later on today or next week, most definitely. But as far as these endings are concerned, so we can see I have this column here as far as the masculine absolute, and then the third column in the feminine absolute. The three X's that you see here represent the three letters of the noun. Most Hebrew words are built off of three letters, and so on to those three letters, we then have the endings. So masculine singular absolute is not going to have an ending. It's just the three letters of the triliteral root. Then we have the masculine dual absolute. So to those three letters of the absolute of the triliteral root, we would add the ending ayim. So ayim, and you can see the pathak there underneath the last letter, followed by the yod, which is pointed with the hirik, followed by the mem, and the accent is over the pathak there. And then for masculine plural absolute, you have the three letters of the triliteral root followed by the im ending. So masculine singular absolute, no ending. Masculine dual absolute, ayim. Masculine plural absolute, im. Then we come on over here to the feminines, and you can see feminine singular absolute. To the three letters of the triliteral root, we would add the a ending. Then to the feminine dual absolute, ayim or athayim here. And then for the feminine plural absolute, oath. So those are going to be the endings there. Now, why does this matter when we are talking about Hebrew adjectives? Well, the reason it matters is because an adjective in Hebrew will take the ending that matches the noun that it modifies. So, in other words, if you have a masculine noun being modified by an adjective, then that adjective will follow the masculine set of endings. If you have a feminine noun being modified by an adjective, then that adjective will take the feminine set of endings. And you can see this if I come over here to this particular example here. So again, this is coming from the textbook that we use in our Hebrew classes, which is Jacob Weingreen's Grammar of Classical Hebrew. And so masculine singular adjectives, they have no special termination. It's just the letters of the three of the triliteral root. Feminine singular adjectives will normally have the "a" ending. Masculine plural adjectives will normally have the "eem" ending, and feminine plural adjectives will normally have the "oath" ending. And so you can see this if we come down here. So the adjective tov, which means good, if it is modifying a masculine singular noun, will simply be tov. If it's modifying a feminine singular noun, tova. You can see it's added the feminine singular ending there. Masculine plural, tovim, adding the masculine plural ending. And then if it's modifying a feminine plural noun, it would be tovo. And so thus, just as an example here, if we, let me come over to this. So for instance, just taking a look at what we have here, Melek Tov. So in this instance, Melek, this is a noun. Let me make sure I've got the right color here. So this is a noun. It is masculine singular, and we can tell that because there's no ending here. But then we come on over here to the adjective tov, that idea of good, and notice again, because of the fact that it is modifying this noun, which is masculine singular, the adjective also is masculine singular. So there is that agreement in terms of gender and number. On the other hand, and so thus this would be good, king, we would say. Melech being king, Tov being good. But then take a look at this next one here. So Isha, Tova. So Isha here, this is another noun, but it has that feminine singular ending on it. So this is feminine singular from Isha being woman. And then you can see we have the adjective over here. It is modifying the noun, and that noun is feminine singular. And so the adjective as well is going to be feminine singular. And you can see that because it also has the "a" ending here. So Isha, Tova, good woman as well. And so this is one of those ways in which we can indicate that the adjective and the noun go together, because the adjective and the noun are going to agree in terms of gender and number. Now, one thing to notice as we go through this as well, in certain instances, as we are dealing with the adjectives, there may be some changes in pointing that occur, especially if there is a movement of the accent. So let's take, for instance, this adjective gadol, which means great. So as in a great king, a great palace, that type of thing. So gadol, great. So if it is modifying a masculine singular noun, the adjective is then also masculine singular. And so there's not going to be any ending. But if it's modifying a feminine singular noun, then we would add the "a" ending, as you can see there. So we have that "a" ending. But when we do that, notice what happens. The kametz that was underneath the gimel, it has reduced to a vocal schwa. Now, why is that? The reason for that is on the original triliteral root, gadol, the accent was here over the daleth. So that is the last syllable of the word. That's where most Hebrew words are, in fact, accented. But when we add the ending, that means then that the accent that was over the daleth now moves down to the last syllable of the word. This creates a little bit of a problem because of the fact that the kamates here, it likes being in the accented syllable, or it likes standing immediately before the accented syllable as it is doing in gadol, but it doesn't like being any further than that. So as a result, because of the fact that the kamates here is farther away, it is in what we would call the proprotonic syllable. That just means that it's in the syllable prior to the syllable that is 2 syllables removed from the accented syllable. It reduces, and it reduces all the way down to the simple vocal schwa. Same thing here when we come to gidolim, where we had the adjective modifying a masculine plural noun. As soon as I added the im ending here, the accent that was, once again, over the daleth, over the dol part of the word, it moves now to the last syllable, which means again that the kamates that was underneath the gimel is now proprotonic. That is, it is 2 syllables removed from the accent. And kamates cannot stand there, so it reduces all the way down to a simple vocal schwa. And then we come as well here to the feminine plural. So if I have gadol that is modifying a feminine plural noun, it's going to take the oath ending. But as soon as I add the oath ending, the accent moves to the last syllable of the word, which means that where the kamates was, that kamates is now proprotonic. That is, that kamates is now 2 syllables away from the accent, and so it reduces down to the simple vocal schwa. And you can see I actually have a this here. So kamates reduction. Kamates cannot stand in a proprotonic syllable. So, and again, this is where we have that idea of tone, which is the accented syllable, pretone, which is going to be before the accented syllable, and then you have proprotonic, which is 2 syllables away. So basically, 2 syllables away from the tone syllable. And so that's what we have here. So kamates cannot stand in a proprotonic syllable. It cannot stand 2 syllables away from the tone. As a result, then, the kamates in a proprotonic syllable reduces to a vocal schwa. So if we have davar, well, in this instance, the var would be the tone syllable, and the da would be the pretone. And kamates can stand in both of those types of syllables, so it's happy. But then I add the im ending, the accent therefore moves, which means that this, the beith, is now the pretone syllable, and the daleth is now the proprotonic syllable. Now, the kamates underneath the beith is not going to have any problems here, but the kamates underneath the daleth will, because of the fact that it is proprotonic. Kamates cannot stand there, and so what happens? We have the reduction all the way down to the vocal schwa, and thus we have devarim. And so that is, again, the same process. So whenever you have a kamates that would have originally stood in a proprotonic syllable, it is going to reduce down to that vocal schwa. And so that is what we have here in column 2. And same thing here with this word, yashar, which is the idea of upright, just, straight. So yashar, here is the accented syllable, so there's the tone syllable, and then the ya would be pretone. No problem there. But as soon as I add the ending, the accent moves. The sheen is now the pretone, and the yod is now propretonic. And so thus the comates reduces all the way down to a vocal schwa. Same thing here when we come to the masculine plural, yesharim, and to the feminine plural, yesharoth. Now, this over here, where we are dealing with a guttural in the initial, in the first root position, remember that gutturals cannot take a simple vocal schwa. They can only take a composite schwa. So thus, when the comates in the propretonic position reduces, it's not going to reduce to a vocal schwa, a simple vocal schwa. It will reduce all the way down to a vocal schwa, but that vocal schwa will be composite. That is the hatef pathak, the hatef segol, or the hatef comates. In this instance, because of the fact we had an A-class vowel there originally underneath the guttural, we will have the hatef pathak standing there. So thus, we have this word, ashir. Well, ashir, that idea of rich, the accent is over the sheen, so no problem, which means, as we see, the ayin is pretone. But then, as soon as we add the ending, the accent moves, and as a result, then the comates would have been propretonic, and so it can't stand there, so it reduces to a vocal schwa, but because it's on a guttural, that schwa is composite. So thus we have asira, ashira. And same thing here when we come to the masculine plural, ashirim and ashiroth. The same thing as well happens with all of the other gutturals as well, whether it's the aleph, the hey, the cheth, or the ayin as well. So hakam, wise, then you come down to the feminine plural, add the ending, the accent has moved, and so thus we have hakama. And again, that comates is now propretonic, so it reduces all the way down to a vocal schwa for a guttural. Then we have hakamim and hakamoth. So these are the forms that you will see when we are dealing with the adjectives. Now, another thing to bear in mind when we are dealing with the adjectives as well is that adjectives can occur in 3 different positions. What do I mean by that? They can either modify a noun directly, that is, as in the statement, the red truck. So if I come on over here to this particular chart here. So modifying a noun directly, the red truck. So in this instance, red is part of the same phrase as truck, and thus it's modifying the noun directly. We call these types attributive adjectives. But we can also as well have an adjective that is modifying a noun indirectly. That is, it will modify a noun through a verb of existence. In other words, unlike the attributive adjective, where the adjective is part of the noun phrase, here with the predicate, the adjective is actually going to be a part of the verb phrase and is modifying it through the verb. So, for example, the truck is red. But then we also have substantival adjectives where the adjective is not modifying a noun, but it is itself the noun. Example that I like to use here, red is a beautiful color. Where here in this instance, our adjective, the same adjective that we had up above in the red truck, and the truck is red, we still have the adjective red here. But notice red is not modifying anything. It's not modifying a noun. Rather, red is serving as the subject here and is thus it is itself the noun. So these are the three different positions for adjectives. Attributive, the red truck. Predicate, the truck is red. Substantival, red is a beautiful color. When we are talking about adjective positions in Hebrew, we can tell the position based on the way in which the adjective is agreeing with the noun that it modifies. So an attributive adjective will agree with the noun that it modifies in terms of gender. So thus, if the noun is masculine, the adjective will be masculine. If the noun is feminine, the adjective will be feminine. But it will also agree in terms of number. So if the noun is singular, then the adjective will be singular. If it's plural, the adjective will be plural. And also in terms of definiteness, which means essentially if the noun has the article, then the adjective also will have the article. And very often it's not unusual for an attributive adjective to be placed after the noun. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, but it is fairly common. Then we also have as well predicate adjectives. Like the attributive adjective, the predicate will agree with the noun that it modifies in terms of gender and number, but not in terms of definiteness. So thus, if the noun is definite, the adjective will not be definite. And that is a feature of the fact that the adjective is part of the verb phrase instead of the noun phrase. Now, another thing to note as well, when we're dealing with a predicate adjective, it must occur with a verb of existence. That is a form of the Hebrew verb haya, that idea of to be or to exist. And once again, that verb, it may be explicit, that is written out, hey yod hey, in the text, or the hey yod hey may not be written in the text but be perfectly understood from the context. And the predicate adjective, it may be placed either before or after the noun. And then we also have substantival adjectives, which, because of the fact that these adjectives are not modifying the noun, but are themselves functioning as the noun, they don't agree with any noun in terms of gender, number, definiteness. Now, how does all this work? So glad you asked that question. Let me come back over here to this particular chart. So notice here we have Tov Hamelech. So Tov Hamelech. Tov is that adjective that we were seeing before, that idea of good. And notice it does not have any ending, so I know that this is going to be masculine singular. Then here I have the noun melech, which as well you can see it does not have any ending, so I know this is going to be masculine singular. But also notice on the front of this, we have that hey with the pathak followed by a dagesh forte, which is going to be the article here. So thus, this is a noun. It's not only masculine singular, but it is also definite. So notice what we have here. My adjective agrees with my noun in terms of the gender. It agrees in terms of the number, but there is not agreement in terms of definiteness. So let's go back to our chart. Where do we see that? So attributive, agreement in terms of gender, number, and definiteness. So this can't be attributive. But predicate must agree in terms of gender and number, but not definiteness. looking like this is going to be a predicate position, and in fact it is. But notice what we said as well over here, that a predicate adjective must occur with a verb of existence. That is a form of the Hebrew verb haya. Now, we don't have that here. So that tells me then that haya is perfectly understood. Thus, I would say then, translate this, so the noun is going to come first, Hamelech, which would be the king, and then we have good. But then right in the middle, we would have that understood verb of existence, exists. So this would then be the king exists, good. But notice here, Hamelech hatov. So up above we had tov Hamelech. Here we have Hamelech hatov. So Hamelech, once again, we know that is going to be our noun. We know that it is masculine singular. And I can see hey with the pathak followed by a dagash forte. So I know this is going to be definite. Then I come over here, hatov. Well, this is the same form of the adjective that we saw up above, but the only difference being that it has the article, hey, with a pathak followed by a dagash forte. So I have an adjective then, and it is masculine, singular, and it is definite. So there is then agreement in terms of gender, there is agreement in terms of number, and there is even agreement in terms of definiteness here. So coming back over to our chart, which construction is this? Well, the attributive must agree in gender, number, and definiteness. That means then that this particular adjective is attributive, and it is therefore going to be modifying the noun directly. So we would say the good king. Then here I have melech tov. Notice as well, there is agreement in terms of gender, there is agreement in terms of number, but neither of these are definite. Now the question is then, is this going to be attributive or is this going to be predicate? Because it's rather hard to tell when both are indefinite, at least if there is not a context. But notice what we have here. The attributive adjective is typically placed after the noun. And so notice here as well, tov, our adjective, comes after the noun. Thus, this as well is going to be attributive. And so this would be, we would say, a good king. It's the same type of construction that we have here as well with Isha Tova. We had already established that both of these are feminine, both of these are singular, and neither of them have the article, so neither of them are definite, which means that they agree in terms of definiteness. And Tova occurs after the noun. So guess what? This is another attributive usage. So a good woman there. Now, notice this. Tova ha isha. So tova, that's going to be the same adjective that we've seen, but it has the a ending here, which tells me it's going to be feminine singular, and it is not definite. No article. But I come over here to ha isha. That's the noun, isha, that we saw up above for woman. So, but it has the ha on the front of it. Well, the reason for that is the article, hey, with a pathak followed by a dagash forte, but the dagash forte went inside of the aleph. The aleph, being a guttural, rejected the dagash forte and the preceding vowel lengthened. So this here is actually the article there. So ha isha, noun, feminine singular, it has the article, so it is definite. So notice here, we have agreement in terms of gender, both of them are feminine. We have agreement in terms of number, both of them are singular. But where the noun is definite, the adjective is not. So there's agreement in terms of gender, there's agreement in terms of number, but there's no agreement in terms of definiteness. And so that would again fit Well, it doesn't fit our attributive, but it does fit the predicate. There's no verb of existence stated, so it's understood, so I will supply that. And so thus we would say the woman, understood verb of existence, good. So the woman exists, good. And I have two more examples here. So ha'isha, hatova. So once again, notice ha'isha, it's the same form that we had up above. So this is again that noun, feminine singular, and it has the article, which again, the pathak has lengthened due to the rejection of the dagesh forte. So it is definite. Then I have hatova, and you can see tov with the a ending, so it's feminine, and then hey with the pathak followed by a dagesh forte. So there's the article. So noun, I'm sorry, that's not a noun, that is an adjective. So the adjective, feminine singular, and then with the article, it is definite as well. So we have agreement in terms of gender, we have agreement in terms of number, and there is agreement in terms of definiteness. So this would be the attributive again. So this is attributive usage, and so we would say the good woman. And then I have here this word here, hatova, which again, you can see our word tov, so I know this is the adjective. And then I have the a ending, so I know it's feminine singular, and then I have hey with the pathak followed by a dagesh forte. So it is definite. But notice there's only one word here in this example. There's no noun for this adjective to modify, which means this is not going to be the attributive. It can't be the predicate either, but it is the substantival. Our adjective is itself functioning as the noun. So we would then say, translate the article, the, and then the adjective, good. And because of the a ending, I could say the good feminine one. Or, so the good feminine one. Or we could also reduce that all the way down to the good woman as well, and that would be the substantival usage. So these are different adjective positions. That is how you determine their agreement and with the noun that they modify. And let's just say it does become significant once you get into the text seeing these adjectives as well. Are there any questions or comments?
I would just say that's an understatement. The fact that you said it is significant when you get into the text, I think it is certainly significant, maybe much more than that. Oh my. And you know what's interesting about this, you know, we look at all of these things and we think, you know, since we're doing a first year Hebrew class on Friday evenings, we have questions that come up. Well, how would I say this? How would I say that? The issue is not how would I from English say this in Hebrew. See, that's the way people learn modern languages. They think, well, I'd have to say this and have to say that. We are not trying to communicate to the ancient Hebrews. We're reading something that has already been built. It's constructed. It's already there by the hand of God. And we are trying to discern what God built into those words. And so just as you've been doing, it is of extreme importance that we read the text the way God built it. So if he built it as an attributive adjective or as a predicate adjective or a substantive, I should say, I was going to say substantive. How did you say it?
Substantival adjective.
Substantival adjective, yes. So But those things are important because that's the way God built the text, and we need to perceive what he said. It's not about what we think it should be saying. And just like we've said multiple times, as we have seen, there are places where even the article is placed on a word, and it is of extreme significance. Just like where he would say the God instead of just God, instead of just Elohim, Ha Elohim, something like that. So we see these things all the time in the text. But anyway, I was paying attention. Right? Can I get a B for class participation today?
I think you can get more than a B, yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. So how about I go ahead and stop the recording and turn it over to you, sir.
All right. Very good.
All right.